So this gentleman, he walked up to me and he was like, "So does everybody love their job?" And I was like, kind of appears that way, right? And he's like, "Well, it feels like everybody got paid to just tell us all how much they love their job because everybody that they met, whether it was an engineer or whether it was a fish biologist, they all just, were really excited about what they do every day. And that's not normal. You don't see that in other industries."
Welcome back to DAM, the official podcast of Northwest Hydropower. I'm your host, Austin Rohr, and I manage all things communications here at Northwest River Partners. Have you ever thought about a career in hydropower? Or perhaps wondered how in the world so many guests of this podcast found a home in the industry? If so, I've got good news because this podcast is for you. As we're talking with Bree Mendlin of the Hydropower Foundation today, and as you'll learn, they've got the answers to those questions and plenty more. Bree, thank you so much for being on DAM today. I'm really excited to talk about the Hydropower Foundation, and I also have to give a shout out to Brenna at NWHA for kind of putting me on this path to get you on. So really excited for this.
Thank you for having me. Yes, you did plug us quite a bit. That was really nice.
Definitely. I'd heard of the Hydropower Foundation up to that point, but I hadn't really dove into it nearly as much as I should. So on a personal level, I'm really excited to learn a lot more about what you guys do. And I think that our audience is also going to appreciate it as well, hopefully.
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully. Yeah, for sure. I appreciate you having me. And Brenda and I are big fans of each other. So I'm excited that she thought of us and had really nice things to say. So
definitely. So maybe you could just kind of jump us into it with telling us a little bit more about what the Hydropower Foundation actually is and the kind of work that you do there.
Yeah, so the Hydropower Foundation, we're a small but mighty 501c3 nonprofit. We are working heavily to get young people interested in careers in hydropower. We've been around since 1994. Started with a research project to develop the first fish-friendly turbine, the Alden fish-friendly turbine, and then we also we're funded by the Waterpower Technologies Office for our research awards program, which went on for about 8 years. And that primarily funded graduate student research in hydropower. It was tremendously successful. We were very sad when it ended, but when the funding goes away, then the program ended. But we had about 80 students go through that program, and about 75% of those students ended up working in the industry. So it was really a fun and really effective program. The students would work on for about a year or two. They'd work on their research and then present at a industry conference. So really cool. And then out of that, when that funding ended, we ended up creating a hiring for hydro career fair that actually takes place at the Northwest Hydroelectric Annual Conference. We have taken it to other conferences as well, but essentially it invites students within that region to visit the conference. It's a jam-packed day. We don't let them rest. They get a little a Hydro 101 session for students who may not be familiar with how hydro works. And we also give them tidbits about career opportunities in the industry. We review their resumes and give them tips on how they can perfect that. We give them tips on interviewing and networking. We go through their 30-second elevator speech with them, and then we turn them loose on the exhibit floor, and they get to meet a ton of companies and organizations that are hiring or potentially hiring interns, co-ops, and things of that nature. And we've seen a lot of success come from that program. We also have created the think tank competition, which also helps the young people get into the industry because we give them a problems to solve. We put them into teams and take them to a facility, and then work with them over a few days on their projects, which they then present to a team of professionals. But it gives them a lot of opportunity to network with the professionals that participate with us. And then, ultimately they end up working in hydro, or maybe they don't. We have had some students that are like, this is not for me. But most of the time the students get there, they see the facility, they've never seen a dam before, and then their eyes are open and they're super excited about hydro. So in terms of what I do all of that. I coordinate these events and student competitions and things of that nature. So and dabble in all of our communication efforts and things of that nature. So a little bit of everything. But I've been here about 10 years, so it's evolved over time. I worked with Brenna when she first was at the foundation. She actually got me started here as an event coordinator, and I've just continued to evolve in my career with the foundation.
Oh, it's amazing work, and we're always, I think, searching for more people to get involved in hydropower, especially taking interest in it as a career. So really exciting there, and I think that the evolution is something I wanted to touch on as well, because as you mentioned, there was sort of the work around like fish friendly turbines, and then there's also what you're doing with students and getting people into this sort of workforce development. And so, I'm curious, for the 10 years that you've been at the foundation, what kind of shifts have taken place as far as the focus, and maybe also kind of what inspired those shifts as well.
Yeah, started when I first started at the foundation in 2014. We were actually the Hydro Research Foundation. And that was primarily because we had that research awards program. And so everything we did was focused on hydropower research. Well, when that program ended, we felt like it was kind of limiting to have that word in our name. And so we decided, because we wanted to focus more on these, on workforce, we wanted to broaden our name a little bit so that it gave us the opportunity to do that, to not just focus on research, but focus on education efforts and outreach and that kind of thing. So that's in 2000, I guess it was 2018 is when we changed our name to Hydropower Foundation. So that was an evolution. We were in a little bit of an identity crisis because it took forever for us to stop saying HRF, now it's just HF. And I'm like, well, that sounds silly. So just call us the foundation. So that's been kind of a good choice, I think, over the years, because it's given us the opportunity to do more workforce development programs. We work really closely with the National Renewable Energy Laboratory on a workforce development project. And so it just opened opportunities that might not have been there otherwise.
It sounds it sounds like a really interesting transition, and also an important one for the hydropower industry as well. Because
Yeah,
I'm not really aware of too many other like we have FWE, for example, here in the
for sure.
Northwest, and things like
Mhm.
that. But as far as kind of like really making that connection between sort of coming out of school and getting into hydropower specifically, it's a very niche thing, right? So
It is. And one of the things that makes us a little bit more distinct from FWE, and then also NEED, we work really close with both of those organizations. They focus a lot on K through 12 in that space. And we focus on the post-secondary level education. So nobody's trying to recreate the wheel. We all want to work together, and it works out really well that way, because we can connect with them, and obviously the students grow up and they'll send them our way, as they graduate and move on to their careers. So
a question that comes to mind as well is, with all the work that you're doing to sort of create this interest in people going into careers in hydropower, what sparked your interest in hydropower initially?
I probably have the same answer that everybody has that works in hydro. Hydro found me. Actually, Brenna found me. She and I worked together doing fundraising events here in the Denver area. So, and we owned a company actually together at the time, and she needed somebody to coordinate a 5K for Hydrovision in 2014 in Nashville. And she ultimately was in a bind because somebody was supposed to plan it and they fell off the map. And she's like, "Can you do it?" And I was like, "Sure." And so I coordinated a 5K, and the rest is history. Everything I did after that was planning events, and I had no idea. I really didn't know anything about hydropower, which is really sad because my husband at the time worked in hydropower. He still works in hydropower, but I didn't really understand even what he did until I started working in it and, took my Hydro 101 courses and whatnot. So my love for hydro has definitely evolved with my career because I learned something new every day. I take these students to competitions and I do these career fairs, and I always have somebody speaking to them and teaching them about hydro on different topics, whether it's, fish passage or even the Hydro 101s. Everybody does it differently. There's always something else to mention. And so I always am learning something new as time goes by. So it's definitely been an evolved love. But one of those that actually makes me think of a conversation I was having with the team at NREL, because we have been creating a lot of tools for young people to have a better path to get into hydro, because falling into hydro is not exactly a plan. It just happens. And so we want to be more intentional with the next generation. And so we have created tools. We have a STEM for Hydro education portal that has virtual tours on it. Students can look up various resources. There's hydropower curricula that we've created that's on there now. Teachers can use that. And there's day in the life videos. So there's a lot of education that they can find in this portal, in addition to brand new career maps, which actually help them figure out how they would travel into the world of hydro if that's their choice. So there's a lot of that kind of work that's being done to try to be a little more intentional for people to have a good path into hydro that doesn't require, just landing there.
Absolutely. I can definitely relate, especially when you're talking about like your sort of need to get up to speed on hydro, even though you were surrounded by it. Because my family has actually been, in public power, worked in public power, and my grandpa's a consultant and all this stuff. And like, it's always kind of a thing that comes up.
Yeah.
Loves to talk about work and all that, but you don't necessarily pay too close of attention. And then I kind of fell into this job a little bit accidentally, and it was like, oh, I need to know what those acronyms actually mean now, right? I need to start paying a little bit closer attention.
Absolutely.
So,
There's always an acronym for sure.
definitely. So yeah, I relate on that. I also think a hydropower 5K sounds really cool. I think we need to have one of those up here.
We did it for a lot of years. It was the Turbine Runner 5K. And as with, COVID affected everything, right? And so we didn't have one once COVID was over. We had to move on to other programs essentially. There's always something else out there, and when you're a small nonprofit, you have to make choices. So unfortunately, we don't do that one anymore. We have started doing a golf tournament at Clean Currents, which has been really fun and well received. So we're trying to, pay love to all the sports.
Absolutely. It's funny. So the gym that I go to is typically like pretty small. There's not ever a ton of people in there. And one day I'm in there, and I don't normally, I go in, I do my workout. I don't really, interact with people all that much. And but I'm kind of doing my thing, and I noticed this person come in, and the guy's got this big water bottle, as you would at a gym.
Mm-hmm.
And he's got a bunch of stickers on there, but one of the stickers on the water bottle is a Hydropower Flows Here sticker from Bonneville. And
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, no kidding. I wonder if he works at BPA. I wonder if he's like, somebody who does something involving hydro or public power. And so I just like real quickly was like, hey, I have to ask about the sticker. Like, what's your tie into that or whatever?
Yeah.
And he goes, oh, I ran some kind of like race, and they had a booth that they were handing these out at, and I thought it made sense for a water bottle, and I was like, oh, never mind.
Funny. Yeah. My goodness, so funny. But it's a small community of people. This
For sure. Yeah, I
hydropower
thought like, oh,
industry.
maybe, but yeah, no. So, but yeah, maybe another race would be good. People, they like the water, the water related stuff, right? So,
Yeah,
even if they're not hydropower people, maybe we can slowly kind of nudge them in that direction.
there you go.
So, getting back on topic, what? Yeah, I know so far off, but what primary areas would you say that the Hydropower Foundation is focusing on right now as it relates to workforce development?
Yeah, so I've kind of touched a little bit on the programs that we're running, but we also just started a Water Power Club, Water Power Communities Partnership Program. We call it WC Squared. Obviously, an engineer created that name because I would never. So that program we're really excited about because we're trying to bridge the gap between industry and academia. So essentially, we get into the universities, we get students to start a student club similar to a chess club or engineering club, and then we help connect them with industry to come and do speaking events and things of that nature. This program also will help fund their club, because what we've learned is that a lot of students don't end up starting clubs because of the cost associated with it. And the schools are like, there's too many clubs, we don't want to pay for it. And so we're trying to eliminate that ask for the students so that they don't really have a reason not to start a club, really, as long as there's a desire there and they're interested in learning more about water power. Then we've had four universities since August start water power clubs, which is really fun. Russ Sanford from Kleinschmidt has been our cheerleader all along and has gone and talked to many of these students at their inaugural meetings to kind of get them kicked off, and they'll continue to do that. So we are asking for industry partners to come alongside and help connect with students and help sponsor this effort so that we can better connect students with the industry. It's a help us help you kind of program. But that's probably the biggest thing that we're working on right now. In addition, obviously, to the other student programs that we're doing, we have a Hiring for Hydro Career Fair coming up in February at the NWHA annual conference. That's on February 6th in Seattle, Washington. So we invite all the students within that area to come to that career fair. And we're going to do 2 think tank competitions this year. So we'll have one in the Southeast, not even the Southeast, this is South, it's Tennessee. So that'll be in like the May timeframe. And then we'll do another one in the Pacific Northwest in August, and that'll be at Rocky Reach Dam in Wenatchee. So we've got a lot going on.
That sounds great. That I if there had been a water power club at my university, maybe I would have joined it. So I think that that's
Right.
really cool. Yeah, yeah.
It's been really neat to see how excited the students are. They have a lot of passion that we didn't know. I mean, we're like untapping it, right? So it's been really neat to see how excited they are. So we just need to get industry, to see that, because I think if they see it, they'll be really excited too. We've seen some of the folks from Chelan County. I know John Yale went and talked to the students at Wenatchee Valley College. That's one of the schools that started a club. There's been a lot of people like that have jumped in to talk to the students. So it's growing. It's just, it's a new program.
Certainly, certainly. I think one question that comes to mind, like if somebody was at a university and wanted to have a water power club, or if there's somebody who in their community wanted to reach out to university to look into that. I mean, is this something that is it more inspired by the industry side of things, I guess, or is it more something that's driven by the foundation, or is it more the students in the university that's kind of reaching out for it?
I would say that the foundation's the driver of it, but we don't want to get in the way of it. Ultimately, we are just the conduit. We're just trying to be the connector. So we're letting students know that it's an opportunity, and then ultimately letting industry know, hey, if you're looking for new employees, the best way to do that is at your local universities. One of the things that we've noticed in hydro is that people, particularly jobs that are required to go to the facility, right? If they're working on at a hydropower plant, those aren't always in cities. Those tend to be more remote. And so one of the ways that we're trying to help those types of I would say utility owners is to really try to hone in on the students that already live in that area, to essentially get them to stay, because they're already there. They probably have family there. They probably have friends there and networks. So they're more inclined to stay rather than trying to get someone new to move from a city that they might really like to go live in a rural area that's 30 minutes from a grocery store. So that's a really long-winded answer, but essentially, yeah, we're just trying to make that connection. Ultimately, we want the water power clubs to just take off. They're student-led. So essentially, once the water power club is led, we just want to be a resource as the foundation to make sure that they're getting to the people that they want to get to. If there's a topic they want to touch on with the students, and we know those people, right? So we can connect them and get that person to them. So yeah, we don't want to get in the way of it though.
Yeah. No, that totally makes sense. I also did see in kind of trying to do some background research and getting, prepped for today that one of the things that comes up is sort of the STEM side of what you do as well. Could you talk a little bit about that?
So essentially the relationship we have with NREL has been through a STEM to workforce project. So for the last 6 years, we've been doing all of these activities with them to cater to students that are pursuing an education within the STEM realm, to apply it then to either hydropower or marine energy. The foundation doesn't get into marine energy a lot, but through this project, we are trying to encourage students to learn more about it. We have created a student competition now. There's a marine energy collegiate competition, and there's also a hydropower collegiate competition for students, which is also part of the Water Power Club. We're trying to connect those students to participate in these competitions as well. So essentially, we're just letting them know, hey, you're majoring, you're an engineer, or there's other disciplines that we need. There's environmental science is a big one, biology majors, fish, there's students that are studying fish biology. We want to make sure that they know there's a path for them. So through that project, we've done a lot of outreach. We've done a lot of surveys to students, to faculty as well, to kind of get a better idea of the perception around hydro and marine energy and see what students know, what they don't know. It's a laundry list of things that we've done over 6 years, but the most recent thing that's come out of that project is the career maps that were just released in October. And then the next thing that we're working on is we're really focused in the DEIA space, diversity, equity, inclusion, and acceptance. And so we are working on a case study in that area to basically reach out and just kind of learn about people's best practices in that area, what they're doing, what's working, what's not working, and then hopefully be able to share that then with the industry at a later date. I don't know when that actually is going to be published, but that is something that we're working on in the 2024 year.
No, that sounds fantastic, and I think another thing that came up as well that I was really curious to learn more about is some of the competitions that are put together for students. What are some of those competitions, and what could somebody go get to work on and see if they could come up with something great?
Yeah, for sure. So the hydropower collegiate competition is that it's actually already underway for the 2024 year. So we rolled the application out in March. And so then the universities have to put together a team. We have 10 teams this year for the hydropower collegiate competition. And those students will then work on powering a non-powered dam. That's the challenge that they have. And there's a few components. There's obviously the component that they actually, have to create this powered dam out of a non-powered dam, but they also have to put together it's called oh my gosh, connections creations contest. Sorry, my brain went blank for a second. So the connections creations part of the contest is where they have to actually reach out to industry. They have to figure out a plan on how they're going to promote their project. So within their community, so many of the students might go to a elementary school and talk to them about hydro, and that's how they're connecting with their own communities. So there's a lot of different opportunities for that, but that is a separate portion of the project. And then ultimately at their final presentation, this year it was at Waterpower Week, NHA's Waterpower Week in DC. This next year, it'll happen at the MHUG conference, which is Hydro Users Group conference. They partner with NHA on that one. And so the students will come and they'll present, and we'll have judges there, obviously, to rank all of the teams and choose a winner and all of that. But it brings a lot of excitement and hype to the conference. So I think we'll continue that, being able to host those alongside conferences. I know NHA has been a great supporter of that. And I know it went over really well at Waterpower Week this year. I think industry was really excited to see. I think it was 100+ students in DC at the conference. So it's pretty exciting. We are loving the fact that it's continuing to grow and get continued enthusiasm from students and industry.
Yeah, that's really, really cool. And I do definitely want to touch a bit more on that enthusiasm note as well. But as far as like the teams go, I mean, are those typically teams being formed from like the water power clubs, for example, or do you see kind of a mix of the clubs and then also maybe just individual teams being put together?
Absolutely. I love that you just said that, Austin. Yes, it could totally be a water power club. Ultimately, these teams, we've created it so that they are multidisciplinary. So we don't want a team full of engineers. We want an engineer. We want maybe even an electrical, a civil. We want a marketing person. We want, environmental science. We want a wide range of students within the team. That's one of the prerequisites when they apply. So ultimately, the Water Power Club is similarly built. We want it to be open to all disciplines. So when students get interested in joining a water power club, it doesn't matter what their degree is in. We want anybody to come in because ultimately hydro has jobs for everybody. You and I are more communications, probably. You might have a marketing degree. We need project managers. We need folks in HR, finance, you name it. And we know from our research that people do not think of hydro for their career if they are, for example, like in finance. That may not be the first industry they go to work in. So with the water power clubs and connecting them with the hydropower collegiate competitions, we're hoping that we're bridging that gap so that there's more awareness, essentially. I mean, that's the ultimate goal. Obviously, we want them in the industry, but at the very, very minimum, at least they learn about the potential opportunities that they might not have known about before.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And it also kind of answered the next question that had popped into my head, which is, what types of careers are people looking to go into, or, what types of degrees are people looking to earn? Because as you mentioned, there's not only obviously putting together kind of the project around like powering an on-powered dam, but then you mentioned the component of actually being able to essentially market that. And, that sounds very communications, marketing type of thing, which is a great skill for anyone to have, even if they are getting like an engineering degree. But it also would totally make sense to have somebody be part of your team who is more focused in an area like that could, possibly help with that side of it, while maybe somebody else is more tackling some of the design elements.
Absolutely. And whether it's the hydropower collegiate competition or our hydro think tank competitions, which are really more regional based, they are, there's always this public presentation component to it. So students have to figure out how to present to a group. And some people have that and some people don't, and some people have to learn it or fake it till you make it. I don't know. But I do think with the HCC, it's been a really nice component to have students have some of that, experience, to have a student that might be a marketing major or a communications major that might be able to help put together that portion of their project.
And it's also really interesting because the episode that I did just before this one was with a scientist out of British Columbia, and he's doing something kind of similarly, but with modeling around salmon runs.
Oh,
And
cool.
yeah. And again, it's like, putting together a team of people that can essentially, create sort of a model that can predict salmon returns and things like that. And I think, looking at all these different opportunities, there's really great stuff out there that if, people want to put together teams to get into these competitions, it's like there's a ton of opportunities for it that I think just even getting people more aware of, which hopefully this podcast helps with, among other things, is really important.
Absolutely, for sure. I do think that with the think tanks are, like I said, more regional based, and so they're tend to be a little bit smaller. But one of the benefits to that, like we might have 14 or 15 students that come and do these tours of the facilities. You get that one-on-one conversation with the students, and you get to, I mean, personally, I get to know them a little bit better than you might, with the larger competitions. They're all great. Like there's always that benefit to all of them. So depending on what type of student, is out there, they might be interested in putting a whole team together and doing the hydropower collegiate competition. And that it's there benefits to both is basically my point. There are students that might not be comfortable getting involved with something so large, and so it's nice to have the think tank opportunity so that they can go to something that's a little more regional, closer to home. And then we put them into teams, so that might be the only thing they get nervous about, is that they are working with students that they don't know, which is intentional, because you don't always get to work with your friends. And so we want to make sure that they understand they're getting a real life experience, putting them with students that they don't know. And then they have to figure it out over the few days, who's going to do what, and where are your gifts? Where are my gifts? If I'm going to be the presenter, or if I'm going to work on the numbers piece of it, so it's pretty cool that we have a lot of options for the students. And just for your reference to anybody who's listening, you can go to www.hydrofoundation.org and learn more about all of these programs. There's connections to the STEM portal as well from there too.
Yeah. I'll second that and say, yeah, anyone interested should definitely follow through on that. When you mentioned the enthusiasm component and really getting that good engagement, I mean, I am curious what just your personal experience has been engaging with those students, and what sort of feedback you receive from them when, you put together these opportunities and get to take them out to these different places. I know for myself, even, I'm like always kind of awestruck a little bit every time that I'm, around some of this stuff. It's like, just such an amazing industry, and there's so many great things that you get to see and be a part of. And so I would imagine that the students also reflect that pretty well, but I would be curious to hear your firsthand experience with it.
For sure. One of my favorite things about what I do is working with the students. It's just, it's hard to explain almost, because there's something that happens with them once they are in the facility, once they're seeing a hydropower plant for the first time and like things start to make sense to them, we usually give them the problem in advance. We give them, about a month in advance so that they can start thinking about it and brainstorming with their teams virtually. But then when we get there and it all starts to make sense to them, then there's just something really cool about that. One example, we were at Rocky Reach Dam in 2019 for the think tank, and one of our students, he was really excited about everything he saw, and that was contagious. Like when you're around these students and they start getting that energy and excitement, you can't help but be excited with them. And we had taken a tour of Chelan Dam, which is not too far from Rocky Reach, and they have a fish facility there, which was really, really cool for the students to see. And we got to talk with a fish biologist about her job and how she tags the fish so that they can make sure that the fish are thriving as they go through the fish ladder and all of that stuff. Like the work that Chelan County does to make sure the fish are safe is tremendous. And to see people passionate in their roles, the students see that, like they're witnessing that. And so this gentleman, he walked up to me and he was like, "So does everybody love their job?" And I was like, kind of appears that way, right? And he was like, "Well, it feels like everybody got paid to just tell us all how much they love their job, because everybody that they met, whether it was an engineer or whether it was a fish biologist, they all just we're really excited about what they do every day." And that's not normal. You don't see that in other industries. So it's really cool my experience, to see students taking that away with them, after having this type of experience. Students are always extremely grateful. They're all very complimentary and grateful for the opportunity, and they connect with, like I said, the professionals there. So they're all friends on LinkedIn by the time we leave. And so being able to broaden their circle of networks is really, really amazing to me. I actually printed out an email not too long ago because I had a gentleman email me and he said, "Look who showed up in my shop today." And it was one of our students who had not only attended a think tank, but she also attended the Hiring for Hydro career fair. And so that I was like, "Are you serious?" Her name is Alyssa, and she's now working for the Army Corps, the Hydroelectric Design Center there in Portland. And sometimes we don't hear about it, like the students don't always come back and say, "By the way, I got a job," or the company does, everybody's busy, right? So I have to, we dig a little to try to find out where the students end up. But that is the ultimate, that's just the ultimate blessing in my life, to be able to see that come full circle and actually see somebody come in and start working in the industry. And Shannon Callum is another example. She works with us on the Pacific Northwest think tank, and she's a mechanical engineer at Grant County PUD, and she was at the 2018 Hiring for Hydro. So it works. It's not always like overnight, but it sure does give me a lot of gratitude in the role that I'm in.
No, that's really exciting. And that was a question that I wanted to touch on as well. It's like, there's definitely people, I'm sure, that, are going to go through this program and eventually end up in a hydropower career of some kind. But, I was curious to hear some of those stories. And it sounds like you've got some really good ones when it comes to people that go through the program and then end up, working in the industry and sticking with us for the long run. So that's really, really cool.
For sure. And it's ever growing. Like I said, I find out, new people along the way. We also have a Julie Kyle scholarship scholarship opportunity for women. And one of the gals, the recipient from last year, Chelsea Brumbach, is now working at Stantec. So it's happening not just with our programs, but even the scholarships that we award, because essentially that scholarship, one of the benefits of it is that we award it at a industry conference. So we get them to come to the conference, we walk the red carpet of the exhibit hall, and I just wish that I had like 100 of these students to walk through the exhibit hall with, because especially like Chelsea, last year when we were walking through, there were just like, I had to kind of beat them off with a stick. People were constantly coming up, handing her cards, and I was like, "Oh, you're going to have a job by the end of the week," and she literally did. Like Stantec hired her right off the bat. So it's really rewarding to see that happen.
Oh, that's really, really exciting. And yeah, I think that hopefully this podcast is going to reach some ears of people who either could themselves be looking for opportunities like this, or maybe they have family who's going to college right now that might be looking for a direction, and this could definitely provide it. So yeah, really
Absolutely.
encouraged to hear that. I'm curious too, obviously, as you mentioned, you've got a lot of different partnerships, whether it be NHA, NWHA, NREL. Who are some of the key partners? I mean, imagine that hits on a few, but yeah, who are some of the
Mhm.
partners for the Hydropower Foundation? And then, what role do some of these partnerships play when it comes to the actual work? I mean, there's obviously the career fairs and getting the students involved in some of the conferences and things, but do they have other kind of instrumental roles as well in making some of the connections for the foundation?
For sure. I mean, we have a laundry list of partners, so I certainly don't want to forget anybody, but first one that comes to mind is NHA. They are a sister organization to us. Um, just to give a little background, they originally started the Hydropower Foundation back in 1994 so that there was an opportunity for fundraising and education around hydropower. They are a 501(c)(6). They focus on policy work and they focus on the current industry and training and education for current industry folks. And we focus on getting people in the industry. So we work really closely together, and they've been a huge support over the years, making sure that we're connected to the people that we need to be connected to, making sure industries also supporting us and supporting these efforts that we're making, because ultimately it's for them too. But they're a big one. Water Power Technologies office, we work really closely with them on different grants that they've given us for work over the years. They also fund the current NREL project that we work on, the National Renewable Energy Laboratory. So we work really closely with them as a partner as well. Grant County PUD, Yuba Water Agency, Chelan County PUD, Southern Company, Kleinschmidt, you name it, they're all partners that have either worked with us on a program like the Pacific Northwest Think Tank or the Hiring for Hydro. The Bureau of Reclamation also has been really supportive of our competitions and our career fairs. And so ultimately I end up working really closely with them on the planning process. For the think tanks, we have to come up with a challenge to give the students. And so we typically work together with all of the partners involved. So like on the Pacific Northwest Think Tank, that involves Grant County, Chelan County, the Bureau, and Stantec and HDR. Did I say HDR? And so we all have to get together and work on what do we want to give the students, and what students do we want? What kind of demographic do we want this time? So like the Pacific Northwest Think Tank that we did last year, the problem was focused on maintenance. So we ended up getting a lot of students that came from the community colleges in the area, which was really cool because we haven't really had that before. And so that took a lot of work. It took a lot of work on Shannon's side of things. Shannon Kellum from Grant County, she did a lot of the brain power around it, but then everybody else has to chime in with, okay, what do we want the questions to be? How do we want the students to answer it? And there's a lot of work that goes into those think tanks, but ultimately I think it's extremely rewarding. But it builds these partnerships for the long term. Ultimately I am very grateful for all of the folks within all of these organizations that support us and that work with us on our programs, and for us to be able to work with them on theirs.
Yeah, yeah, no, that absolutely makes sense. And I think one of the other things that comes to mind is, there's no secret that there's kind of a challenge right now, not just with energy, but I think kind of across the board of a lot of industries struggling with recruitment as far as, there's a lot of people that are approaching retirement age, and there's not a lot of younger people in the workforce coming in to sort of fill those roles and keep that ball rolling. And so I'm curious, when did we as an industry start to recognize that more work was going to need to be done, particularly when it came to getting young people interested in these hydropower careers?
Well, I mentioned I've been here 10 years and we've been talking about it since I got here. So it's been an issue. However, I feel like, and this is totally a feeling, I don't actually have data to support this, so I need to, preface this, but I feel like we've been saying it for a long time. I can't tell you how many presentations I've done at conferences sharing like, hey, these are the programs we're doing to try to get people in, and there's an aging workforce, and DOE's been saying it, and it's like everybody's been saying it, but I feel like now people are like, oh, it's actually happening. Like we feel it now. So people are listening now, which is great, but it's like they needed to hire somebody yesterday. And so now it's just a much bigger need that requires all hands on deck. It requires, while we do the work, a lot of the work in workforce development, there's a lot of people doing a lot of great things, a lot of organizations, utilities, things, that are doing great workforce development efforts as well. So it is definitely an all hands on deck kind of situation now.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And I think that one of the things that I hear often in probably the last year or so, is the challenge that COVID and lockdowns and, I think some of the work from home movement and things like that have kind of changed as well the workforce challenges that a lot of utilities locally are experiencing. And so I'm curious what challenges you're seeing as far as you just developing a workforce, developing sort of not only I think the interest in hydropower, but then also maybe, getting people to actually kind of take that step and pursue some of these careers. Because I imagine that, there's obviously a big awareness component to it, right? But then yeah, especially these last few years, I think that the landscape has really changed around just trying to kind of connect the dots between people and the job opportunities that are out there.
Absolutely. For sure. I mean, everybody has felt the effects of COVID in different ways. We've certainly had our own challenges at the foundation, making sure people know we're still here, and we're still doing these programs and coming back to in-person events after not being able to do in-person events with students that was a huge challenge for us. I think one of the things that I hear the most, and this has been through, with NREL, we've done a lot of surveying of the industry, and recently we took it to the next level and we actually did industry interviews. So we spent about 50 hours collectively interviewing companies within the industry to just kind of learn what their challenges are, what workforce areas are hitting the hardest. And one of the things that seemed to be unanimous was they put out job postings that may go unanswered if they are in-person jobs. And then the minute they decide to make it, if they can make it this way, the minute they decide to make it a remote option, there's a remote work option, then all of a sudden they've got, 50 applications. We're hearing that a lot. People, the younger generation or even just this generation after COVID wants to work from home, and that's just not always an option. We've heard from companies that are really trying to be more flexible, and if they can offer like a hybrid situation where you can come to work 1 or 2 days a week to the office and then work from home the other days, that seems to be kind of the best fit, it seems like. But there's some jobs that just if you're a welder, you're a welder. You got to go to the facility and be a welder. There's a lot of roles that have to be in person. And so I think that that's still just a struggle. I personally I'm optimistic that that's going to get better as we continue to move further and further into the post-COVID world, that people will realize that like it really is fun to work with people and, in person with people. I have to work at home because that's what I do. But I love my opportunities to see people is when I go to conferences and we do events alongside conferences, and it gives me a new energy, like to be able to see everybody and be able to meet some of the people that I worked with like 5 people at NREL during that whole COVID timeframe for 3 years, and I'd never met them in person until I went and saw them at a conference, and I was like, oh my goodness, like that's crazy to me that you can talk to somebody almost every day and never actually meet them in person until, for anyway, that was just crazy to me. But in terms of the workforce, I think we're seeing a lot of that people want to work from home, but then there are others that don't. So it's just finding the right person, for the right job.
Yeah, and I would imagine too that some of these conferences and different opportunities that the foundation's putting together might be something that nudges people more in that direction as well. Like you said, there's a lot of enthusiasm and excitement and getting to connect with people, and also being on site at some of these places and seeing things in person puts you in a lot more of a enthusiastic mood than, talking about it over Zoom, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think all day long, people would rather talk to someone in person than through the computer. We're talking through a computer now. It's okay. I mean, I enjoy it, but there is something about that in-person communication that just, you can't replace that.
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah. As far as some of those gaps too, I mean, are there particularly like areas within the industry where there's maybe more job opportunities than others? Like, if someone's say thinking about a water power career, but they haven't even really decided what they want to do. I mean, is it like, oh, we need a bunch of people with engineering degrees, or are we looking at a situation where we do need more people sort of in those other roles with, say, marketing, communications, things like that? Or, where are some of those big gaps right now that you're seeing?
Yeah, one of the biggest gaps we've seen over the last few years has been in the crafts and trades. They just there are so many jobs that are needed to be filled right now. And I know that a lot of utilities work with unions, but then there are some that don't, because some of the unions don't actually have the right skill set. There's a lot of uniqueness to the workers that work at the power plants. So it may not be as easy as just going and getting a welder from the union or, a machinist. They need somebody who can do kind of a jack of all trades almost. So they end up training, people on the job, and they'll train them how they want to train them, so that they can kind of do a little bit of everything. But there's definitely a shortage in crafts and trades. And I know that like we're actually in a place, I feel like it's being a little bit more accepted for students that graduate high school that don't necessarily feel that a 4-year degree is their path. It's a little more accepted that they go learn a trade, and you make a lot of money. They make really good money, these tradespeople, and you don't have college debt. Right? You come out of college, you get a job. I mean, it seems to be a really good fit if that's a path you chose. But so that's a need. Engineers all day long. Everybody needs engineers. You name it. That's just something I think that will continue, particularly with the newer technologies like pump storage. Hydro is becoming really integral in the future, and so with that comes more job opportunities. We need engineers. We need folks that work on cybersecurity. That's a huge issue. There's environmental science. We need people working in that area. So there's a lot of opportunity ultimately. So if anybody's interested in working in hydro in general, they pretty much have their pick of what they can do.
Yeah, I know that I did want to ask about those newer hydropower developments and whether those technologies were creating new opportunities. But from what it sounds like, there's already plenty of opportunities, and it's just going to add even more on top of that. But those
Right.
opportunities are out there, so we're not hurting for hydropower industry positions
For
right
sure.
now.
Absolutely.
So I think going back to maybe the foundation itself here as we get down to kind of the end, you mentioned that you're a 501c3, and you also point out kind of that 501c6 distinction, and some different things like that. As far as like the Hydropower Foundation receiving funding and support, what is the avenue that you go about doing that? If somebody listening to this podcast maybe wanted to be supportive of the foundation.
For sure. So we get our funding from federal grants, like this STEM Workforce Development Project that we're working on, that is funded by Water Power Technologies Office. We also get funding from our partners, sponsor, opportunities through the Hiring for Hydro Career Fair, for example, is completely underwrote by NWHA. The Bureau of Reclamation supports that as well. So we get funding from partners in that way, and then contributing members. So we have folks that contribute to our foundation to wherever we need it, essentially. They contribute on an annual basis, and that helps us keep the doors open and continue the work that we're doing. And so that's always extremely appreciated. And then we have individual donors that just care and want to, support in any way they can. And so that's an opportunity as well.
No, that's fantastic. As far as kind of the, maybe the outlook for the foundation as well, are there areas you'd like to expand into, or maybe some areas that you hope that you could one day break into that, again, maybe somebody who wants to be supportive of the foundation could, somehow help fill some of those, or, make those connections, fill those opportunities, make things possible for your work?
Work some magic, you think? One of the things I've always wanted is for the Hydro Think Tank competitions to become more of a national thing. Like, there's an example of this, and I don't want to make this too long, but Tim Tebow does a night to shine. I don't know if you've ever heard of that, but he does a prom night for kids that have special needs, which has been really cool. I've worked at some of these in the past, but they all happen on the same night or across the nation. And so I always thought, the think tanks really work the best in August, right before students go back to school. We've kind of found a sweet spot with that seems to work best for student schedules. So I'm like, well, couldn't that be the same? Like, wouldn't it be cool if there were just nationwide think tanks all happening the same week in that August timeframe? I don't know. That, big dreams, right? Like that. I always thought that would be really cool to see that grow. And then ultimately our water power clubs, I have to come back to that because I really feel like we've hit a nail on the head with this, being able to be more involved in the schools. It's building sustainable relationships with these students and with the faculty there, by having these water power clubs. And I feel like it's just ultimately the wave of the future, because if these water power clubs continue, then you continue to have students going through them. And ultimately, I would love to see 10 years from now, power clubs everywhere, right? And throughout the US. So that's, I guess, big dreams.
Well, for somebody who has some water power dreams as well, what would you say for anyone who wants to get involved, if they want to join a water power club, or find out if their school even has one, or if they want to get involved in the think tanks or anything like that, where would be kind of the place they should start to do that search and look for those opportunities?
I would just have to send them to our website, hydrofoundation.org. They can find everything there. They can connect with the Water Power Club website from there as well. All of our links to our educational activities that we've done with NREL are all included on our website. So hydrofoundation.org is the place. I would also say, if they're interested in any of our activities, follow us on LinkedIn. That's probably the best place to find us. We're on other social media channels, but I feel like that one's the most popular, I guess, for the types of programs that we have. And then follow us, or sign up for our newsletter. We do a quarterly newsletter letting people know what our latest activities are. And so that's a really good way to keep track of what's going on.
That sounds great. Well, Yeah, like you said, go to hydrofoundation.org, sign up and get involved. And I think that there's some really exciting opportunities here from the sounds of it. So really, really encourage people to look into those more. And again, whether it's you or somebody that who could use, maybe a nudge in that direction, or might be already kind of looking for it but just hasn't really connected that. There's some really great ways to do it, and it's not too difficult to do. So yeah, definitely encourage that. There is one last thing that we have here at the end of every podcast. And have you listened to any of our episodes of Damn up until now?
I
Oh,
have, but I'm not remembering what was at the end. If I'm supposed to remember what was at the end, I'm not remembering.
so so our last thing, and it's kind of a thing I always put people on the spot for, just because I feel like we get the most genuine answers that way. Although
Oh, good.
some people love it, some people hate it, and I understand both sides of it. But I always ask everybody to kind of go back, step back from the career conversations, the really in-depth industry stuff, and talk about a little bit more personal things. So I ask everybody for some life advice. And so if you have just anything that you like to live by, or maybe something that stuck out to you recently that you wanted to incorporate into your life more, just something that I think, we can always use a little bit more of. And we talk to so many great, brilliant people here on the podcast that the more advice we can compile, the better. So that's how I like to close out every episode. And so the floor is yours to give us a little bit of advice.
Okay. Well, the first thing that came to mind while you're asking me this is just that I have a huge faith. I'm a Christian, and I love helping people. And so I have always found that when feeling down, sometimes life gets kind of down. Um, I feel like there's nothing better that I can do than to go find somebody to help. That it always lifts me up. It makes even, and it doesn't have to be big. It can be something small, take cookies to your elderly neighbor or something silly like that. But I have found that people appreciate it and it makes you feel good. And then it just, I don't know, the problems of the day might seem smaller. And that comes from my faith, but it also comes from, I have to say, my husband has been a big encourager of that. He tends to, he'd give the shirt off of his back to anybody. He's just always the one who opens the door for people. He sees a need being met. Somebody drops something, he picks it up, so I have learned a lot from him in our almost 17 years of marriage. So my advice is to just be kind to people. People are all going through things, and you just never know what they're going through. So kindness is usually the best way. And doing something nice for somebody. It goes a long way.
I certainly couldn't agree with you more. I don't know how anyone could disagree with that, frankly. But I think that that's really a really great note to close out on. And I also think too that it speaks so much to the work that Hydropower Foundation is doing, and the spirit of, I think, not only the work and trying to get people connected and help them find a path in life, but also I think just the spirit of our industry as well. Like you said, you don't find a lot of people who are unhappy about what they do. I think
Mhm.
everybody, generally speaking, kind of loves their position and loves their work and loves the people they work with. So we're in a really great position there. And I think a lot of it comes back to the people and like you said, the spirit of kindness and of just trying to always be there for one another. So yeah, really appreciate that closing note. Thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thanks for having me today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, definitely. So, like you said, hydropowerfoundation.org, head over there, check it out, support them. And yeah, thank you for making the time. I think this is a really important message that we need to get out there and spread the awareness around education and opportunities in hydropower. So, yeah, thank you for coming on today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
If you or a young, driven individual in your life would benefit from the various opportunities provided by Bree's organization to kickstart a career in hydropower, hydrofoundation.org, hydrofoundation.org, hydrofoundation.org. Try saying that 3 times fast, and hopefully you got that down. As with all of our guests, I truly appreciate Bree taking the time to come on and educate us all today about what the foundation is all about. It's a noble cause and also one that's vitally important to ensuring that we have the people needed to keep our energy infrastructure running and to take important steps towards meeting the demands placed upon it. There is no clean energy future without bright minds and strong leaders to get us there. All right, I'll step down from my soapbox now and instead let you have a turn. How, might you ask? Oh, well, for one, there's our contact form on nwriverpartners.org. You can also just email us directly at info@nwriverpartners.org. Either way, we would love to hear what you think of the podcast, what recommendations you have for future episodes, and, well, anything else you want to share. Another way to voice your thoughts and opinions would be to leave us an ideally 5-star review on your favorite listening platform. While you're there, don't forget to turn on notifications so you don't miss future episodes, which arrive every other Friday, as always. Lastly, be sure to follow us at NW River Partners on Facebook, Instagram, X, YouTube, and LinkedIn. All right, that's a wrap on this one. See ya.